Hello, NutriWhite family. We are here with Dr. Jason Barker from Vibrant Wellness, and we're happy to have him as a guest because we have, for a couple of months already, almost a year, used his exams and they're so powerful. They're so wow for the patient. So we want him as a guest so we can understand better what they do and how they work and what is it that it makes Dr. Jason so special. Vibrant Wellness. Let's start for that.
Okay, well, I work with Vibrant Wellness. We are really a biotechnology company in the health space. So we have, as you mentioned, numerous functional medicine labs for pretty much everything that you may want to address with your patients. We have micronutrient panels. We can look at a person's nutritional status. We have a test for looking at a person's microbiome and how their digestion is working. We have organic acids. That's kind of like I always say it's like a human emissions test when we take our cars in and hook them up to the exhaust and see what the car's engine is doing. We can do that with the body essentially with this test. That's a urine test. On and on and on. So if there's an issue or a concern or a condition in a person, we have the tests that can help clinicians further understand the causes of what's going on.
Okay, so I want to go through several exams that are the ones that I used mainly, especially the neurosummer, the organic acid testing, the food summer, the wheat summer, the mold. There's so many. But first, what is it that you do different from like a regular lab? Or how would you consider yourself different from a regular lab? And then also from other, because what I have found with you is that you're also different from like the functional medicine labs.
Yep.
So if you can tell us a little bit more, and as people get to know this test, what would they get, or what would they find different from other labs?
Okay, yeah. So starting, how are we different from a traditional lab, as it were? You normally people go see their primary care doctor. They might do, for general wellness or just, some certain concerns. They may do very basic sets of labs like a CBC and a chemistry and maybe some lipids, So it's a very kind of small set of labs initially when a person may go into their doctor, just kind of seeing if there's anything off. And honestly, people have to be fairly sick. Those basic labs typically don't change until a person has, they're kind of well into the disease process, so to speak. And of course, there's lots of different ways we could kind of address this, but basic or traditional lab companies look at a relatively small set of markers. And those markers aren't necessarily geared towards prevention or wellness or trying to get down to that root cause as we speak. So nothing wrong with those labs. They're very useful. I run them on patients that come into my practice. We do need to kind of get that basic set of information, but if we want to go a lot deeper with what's troubling our patients, we need to look at advanced functional labs, and that's where Vibrant excels. Now, the other thing about Vibrant is that our company was founded on some really interesting technology, and that technology is used with our antibody tests. So, for your listeners, an antibody is a protein that your immune system makes to fight something that comes into your body. So, if you have the flu, you make flu antibodies, but we can measure this for lots of different things that are going on in the body, not just an illness or an infection. But nevertheless, the people that founded Vibrant created this protein microarray. So we're very, very, very good at detecting when the immune system is hitting any of these antibodies. Now, this technology is used in tests like the wheat zoomer, the food zoomers, partially in that gut zoomer. So we have that technology specifically for those antibody antigen interactions. But then we've also used all of the cutting edge technology, the gold standard as we call it, for all of our other tests. So we use other technologies that are available to us, like the organic acids. That's a urine test. So we're using something called liquid chromatography, tandem mass spectrometry. And That's technology where we can find something as small as 1 part per quadrillion in
Oh,
a
wow.
sample. So if you think of a piece of pie, we can find a quadrillionth of it. So crazy, crazy small. But anyway, we're a technology company. We're based on some innovative technology, but then we've also expanded it into all these other areas and all these other functional medicine tests. So really, for people to understand, sure, if you have a complaint, you go to your doctor, they run some basic labs, maybe they'll be able to help you with that. But a lot of times, and I think this is why all of us are in the functional medicine world, is that those tests don't necessarily give us the answers that we need. So we can go lots and lots, much more deeper into all these other type of tests that you just spoke about that you like using.
Okay, so I have my favorite ones that I already mentioned, but I want you to tell me which ones are your favorites or the one that you use more in your practice. But first, before getting into the details of several exams, what like if you would say like why would people need to understand that this is important to do these exams even though the insurance doesn't cover them? And like you were saying, like you get to the root cause and it's the basics for functional medicine, and it's such a modern and accurate, I would say accurate is what I find most in my practice for from these results. What else would you say that it's important for people to do these exams? Why would they invest in doing this?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll give you a good example, and also, this is one of my favorite tests. It's the micronutrient panel. Do you use that one in your practice?
Yeah, not so much, but yes, because
Okay.
and we can go into further, but I usually before I would use a SpectraCell.
Okay.
So what's the difference? You can start telling us.
Sure. So similar but different. So I really like the micronutrient panel. Like the test name sounds. Actually, it's called the nutrient zoomer now. We renamed a few
Uh-huh.
things, but it's now the nutrient zoomer. But that test, like the name sounds like, it looks at nutrients in our body. So we can look at all the B vitamins, vitamin A, D, E, K, like so all the major vitamins, all the major minerals, several electrolytes, several antioxidants. And so how our test is different. So let's say a conventional lab, usually people are only looking at a few key select vitamins, vitamin D, maybe folate, maybe B12. That's usually kind of it. Now, you can't just go looking for these nutrients floating around in the bloodstream because they're not always sitting there. Like, so as an example, iron is found more so in the red blood cells. Magnesium is found in the red blood cells. It's not necessarily floating around in the liquid part of the blood, the serum. So anyway, the nutrient zoomer looks at those nutrients that are in the liquid part of the blood, the serum as we call it. And then we also look at the nutrients that are found in the red cells and in the white blood cells. And, white cells are the immune system. Red cells, we're kind of taught they just carry oxygen around, but they do a lot of other stuff too. But anyway, so with our nutrient zoomer, we can see these two different kind of compartments, as I call it. So serum is reflective of what that person may have consumed, whether it was a food or a supplement in the last few days. And then the really interesting part is that when we look at the nutrients within the white cells or the red cells, we're kind of looking back in time. So those white blood cells hang around, they live for about 6 to 8 weeks. So if we look at how much of a certain vitamin or an amino acid is in that white cell, we can see how that person's nutrition has been over the long period of time. So we get a good look at what is your nutrition like today and what has it been over the past. So that's where we can really, again, going back to those conventional labs, it's like, okay, here's a few vitamins that are floating around in your bloodstream. Also, if you wanted to look at all of these vitamins, minerals, nutrients, antioxidants that we do on the nutrient zoomer at a regular conventional lab, it would be extremely expensive. It would be
Mm.
thousands and thousands of dollars probably. So our test doesn't cost anything near that. So I love this test for two patient populations. So in my patient population, I get, very generally two types of people. I see a lot of engineers in my practice. So engineers, they're very methodical thinking. They like to think that if, A plus B equals C as an example, as clinicians and doctors, human physiology isn't always like that. But nevertheless, I like to show this test to people who want to see if their supplements are working. Is what I'm taking, is it getting into my body? Because, right, that just because it goes in the mouth doesn't mean that it's being used. So I can see that. So I can see this in people who, again, the two types I get people who eat really well, they have a perfect diet, right? They get all the macronutrients, they're doing a great job, but they don't believe in supplements. They say, I don't need any supplements. I'm getting it all from my diet. Well, let's do a
Uh-huh.
test and see if you're actually absorbing this because there's a lot that happens between that pill and then into the cells of the body, right? So we can see that. And then on the contrary, right, there's a lot of health information online these days. Everybody's taking some kind of supplement. They heard this one, that one, this one's good. They come in with a big bag full of supplements, right? And no offense, but like lay people who are just learning off the internet, they may be taking a lot of the same thing. They may not realize it. So anyway, I can look at that and say, look, you're taking too much, or maybe your tablet supplement you're taking, it's not being absorbed. So I can really see a person's nutrition on several different fronts like that. So that's why I love that test. And the last thing I'll say about it, nutrition is what makes us healthy, right? This is why we eat food. This is why we say you have to eat nutritious food so that your body can heal and repair and regenerate. So if a person doesn't have that basic foundation, we can't expect them to get well. So we can do all the other things, but if they're not getting those nutrients in, they're not going to heal as readily as the next person. So this is a great foundational test for like, what does your nutrition look like? And if you're missing some vitamins or minerals or whatever, then we can talk about maybe you need to eat more of these foods and you should take this supplement. So that's one long example of that test that I like.
Okay, so it's like we're understanding where we're going, that it's specific, that it's accurate, and also that it gives us much more information than any, as you say, blood exam that will give us, oh, vitamin D only or vitamin B12. It gives us
Yep.
much more information of the micronutrients. Okay, so let's go to my favorite one, and it was the one that we really started using Vibrant Wellness. It was because of the neurosummer.
Hmm.
So if you want to talk about it, I
Yeah.
can say that I'm using it especially in autistic children. If I want to, for example, rule out pans or pandas, I also use, and you tell me if it's okay or not. I use it also for anyone that is having like neurological issues or like memory loss or fatigue or chronic fatigue, etc. And also for people that want to, many people come, as you say, like they want to prevent Alzheimer, or they
Mhm.
want to, they know now that the health in, so like the health diseases or the health issues are going more to the brain, and we're having a
Mhm.
lot of inflammatory conditions in the brain, and every time more autoimmune conditions. So anyone that really wants to prevent uh um in a way a healthy a brain issue, I think it's an excellent match.
Yeah, that's a how do I put it? It's a fascinating test. It's very useful for all the things you mentioned, but what that test does is so backing up a little bit, normally your brain is kind of protected from your immune system. Your immune system isn't really getting into the brain. And the brain is protected by what we call the blood-brain barrier. So it's a very, very selective barrier around the brain, and it protects the brain from poisons, essentially. Anything we might eat, not that we're eating real poison, but well, in some cases we are, sadly, but anything that we ingest that could be harmful to the brain, that's why that protective blood-brain barrier is there. So it's very, very, very selective. So, but that barrier can become damaged, right? Just like a door into your house, the hinges may become loose and then, or there's a little bit of a gap and the cold air can come in, something like that. So that can happen with that blood-brain barrier. So what we're doing with the neural zoomer is we're looking at, again, those antibodies, so pieces of our immune system that may be attacking different parts of our brain. And so, as I mentioned, that's not really normal, but there's a lot of reasons people can have that disrupted blood-brain barrier. Like you said, pandas, PANS, autism, head injuries, people who have a damaged gut microbiome, even that can affect the brain. But anyway, the NeuroZoomer is looking at very select parts of the brain that may be affected by the immune system. So again, that part of the brain is the antigen, so that's just the name for a protein. And then the antibody is that protein that the immune system releases, and then they lock up like that, and that causes problem. And so at its root, at its most basics, the NeuroZoomer is a test for neuroinflammation. So a specific brand of inflammation that's hitting the brain. And right, I think we all talk about inflammation. Like I think most people are aware of it. If your elbow is sore and red, that's inflammation. Asthma is inflammation of the lungs. Heart disease is inflammation of the heart, right? But it's a fascinating test because I feel like in my practice, we haven't really paid a lot of attention to the brain and neuroinflammation over the past years. I think it's just kind of like just it wasn't highlighted really. But now with the NeuroZoomer and clinicians like yourself, we can really see what's happening in the brain. And like you said, neuroinflammation can show up a million different ways in somebody. It could show up as autism, it could show up as pandas, it could show up as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these conditions and diseases we have really, we know what cause, we know what's going on, like in the tissue, but we don't always know the cause. So the NeuroZoomer is excellent. Again, people who already have a condition, people who, let's say, mom or dad was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some other serious neurological disease, like we can look and see if a person is headed down that road. So we say that these markers are potentially predictive. So, like, hey, you've got some interactions, you've got some type of neuroinflammation, you're 40 years old, mom was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you're kind of heading down that same path. So we can take this information and we can hopefully either slow it down or stop it entirely. So it's a really excellent test for all of those things that we just kind of mentioned.
No, and I think also as you were talking, it's like so fascinating that we have this in our hand. Also, I say like people say, "Oh, I wish for Christmas to be healthy." And I think one of the most scariest things in life is to have a mental issue or
Yep.
a mental health issue. So imagine that with this exam, we're having the power to, as you say, know that in the long run, you're definitely gonna have like a brain issue because you're already having the inflammatory response. So whatever is the symptom or that you or if you want to prevent it, I think it's amazing to understand this. And I have found beautiful how you do it. Like the first, like you do the exam and you find, I don't know, for example, you also find the streptococcus or if it's more like for Epstein-Barr or for another type of virus, and you can say like, oh, it's affecting this side of the brain or this side of the brain. But the most beautiful part is when you do like an intervention, and then 6 month or 1 year after, you repeat the exam, and then you can see how definitely the brain is getting much better. So before we get into the other exams, I don't know if you want to comment about what the relationship with leaky gut and leaky brain, because people say like, oh, nutrition and then like functional medicine and brain, but definitely and the beauty of this exam is how you can really see the relationship between leaky gut and leaky brain, really.
Yeah, that's a really important part of this because theoretically you should not have it, or let me back up. If you have leaky gut, you more than likely have leaky brain because they are made of similar but different types of cells. So leaky gut, right? When we eat food, it gets turned into the tiniest molecules, right? And it gets absorbed. So think of the gut, it does have microscopic little holes. That's how we absorb stuff. Leaky gut, those holes get a little bit larger. And again, this is on a microscopic scale, right? But if you have leaky gut, if you have too much of the wrong kind of bacteria, it can release other compounds that can, from the bacteria that can leave the gut and it can go to the brain and cause that blood-brain barrier to get leaky and then cause that neuroinflammation. So, the old saying, health starts in the gut, and that's really true with this as well. So if somebody has dysbiosis, the wrong balance of bacteria, or maybe they've been carrying an infection around for a long time. They're not really sick, but it's been there chronically. All these things can lead to that leaky brain. So with the neural zoomer, I always like to see people run that gut test as well, the gut zoomer as well. So I can see, hey, do you have that bacteria? Do you have that kind of dysbiotic signature that could be hitting your brain? Because we want to know, we can tell on neural zoomer, hey, you have leaky brain, hey, you have inflammation, but where did it come from? Let's fix your gut as well while we're doing this.
Exactly. So that would take us to the other exam that I love and I do frequently, that it's the gut zoomer. And as you say, they go together because as you see the brain inflammation, you need to see the
Mhm.
the gut inflammation, and that comes with probably a dysbiosis, and the gut zoomer is beautiful. And this is interesting because many people go to regular labs and they do like parasites, or they
Mhm.
like, oh, everything is perfect, but then when they do this zoomer, we see much more in depth the how the gut is working really, and how, and if you have more the leaky gut, or if and what are the approaches that we need to do to definitely get better in that gut. But I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the gut zoomer, and what is it
Yep.
different from like a regular fecal exam, and also how is it different that nowadays is very common that people are doing like ubiome or
Mhm.
other microbiome exams. But what I found, and now you say more, is that these other exams, it's like a general thing, like, oh, this is a population that you have and take these probiotics. But I
Mhm.
feel that with vibrant wellness and with with the gut zoomer, you get much deeper in really what is it that it's not balanced, and you can really target that, and you can also understand like, oh, this is the gut and this is what it's happening, rather than only seeing the population that other
Mhm.
exams are now like doing.
Yeah. So, like kind of backing up a conventional lab, they might look for a particular parasite, or they might look for a particular disease-causing bacteria or something like that. So they're looking for a few select things, and there's other cases, but usually those tests are looking for something that's causing a disease, some kind of infection. The gut zoomer is much, much more comprehensive. So we're looking for those bacteria and viruses and parasites. And we have a few technological advancements also that make it easier to find those things, because as an example, parasites are very elusive. They don't want to kill us. They want to live off of us, so they do a good job of hiding. So we do several types of preparation of the sample that just makes us better at finding the parasites. Now, we'll also look at different forms of inflammation. So the body makes inflammatory enzymes that are called, and those are directed at different issues that may go on. So we look at a lot of those. We look at other components that make the gut healthy, like short chain fatty acids. These are compounds that the bacteria make when they interact with certain plants. And while it's called an acid, it's actually a very healthy thing for the body. But most importantly with this, we're looking at the microbiome, which is the name for all the bacteria that live in the gut, trillions of them, right? You know the old saying, there's more bacteria living in our guts than there are human cells of us. So in some senses, we're more bacteria. And that just kind of highlights how important it is to look at this. It's really its own kind of organ. Um, you know, Science is advancing where we know that certain patterns of bacteria can affect your mental emotional state, so the bacteria can, change your brain essentially, aside from what we were talking about, the neural zoomer. But anyway, with the gut zoomer, we use some very, very advanced technology to identify those bacteria. So we just look for different genetic sequences. So we're looking for that bacteria's genes, and everything has different genes. So anyway, the technology we use is very, very, very sensitive. So we're very good at finding that bacteria. And then we're also very good at knowing that it's actually that bacteria. So a lot of other labs may be okay at finding the bacteria, but they're not great at saying what kind it is. So I use the analogy of like if I go to somebody's family reunion and I think everybody is Adriana, you know, because you all kind of look alike, right? Because you're family. Like you might look a lot like your sister or your cousin or an aunt, and that's what happens with these gut tests is they're not specific enough to tell us exactly what kind of bacteria is. So that's what you see with these bigger tests is they're very generalized. They don't get into those fine details.
Yeah, and also they give you information, but they don't give you like a course of action, as you said. If you know like what is the short chain fatty acids, or if you need enzymes, or if you need, and in a way, I compare it to when people go to a gastroenterologist and do a like endoscopy or gastroscopy. Obviously, it's not the same, but in a way it gives you a really good detail of how that gut is doing and what are the interventions that you can do to make it better.
Yep.
So, well, we have gone through micronutrients, neurosumer, the gut sumer, and then there's so much more. I know you have also like the oh well, and the neurosumer now has the neurotransmitters also, right? This is like something new that you added to the summer.
The neurotransmitters are added on the gut zoomer now.
In the gut summer, not in the
Yep.
neurosumer. Okay, but there was something added to the neurosumer, right?
No, it's the same. It's the same test.
It's
We
the
just
same.
changed some names around on it.
Ah,
So
okay. So
yeah.
the gut summer is the one that now has have neurotransmitters. But I make you a question. So in the gut summer, we have the bacterias and the markers that tells us like the gut in a way. But then when you analyze the neurotransmitters like serotonin or I think also like dopamine, etc., what is it that you are measuring? Like you are measuring the amount of that neurotransmitters in the fecals, also like in the ECs, or how does it work?
Well, we're the neurotransmitters are measured in the urine. So
In
that's
the
the
urine.
best place to collect those. But what we've done is we're tying those neurotransmitter levels to what's going on in the gut. Now, a great example of this is that, in the past, people will run neurotransmitters tests and they assume that they're just all coming right out of the brain. And that isn't necessarily true for every one of them. And the best example of that is serotonin. I think everybody's familiar with serotonin. That's the neurotransmitter that makes us happy. And, the antidepressant drugs try to keep more serotonin around. Now, however, more than 90% of the serotonin that we make is made in our gut. So by looking at the bacteria in the gut and measuring that serotonin as an example, we can see how that bacteria is affecting the production of serotonin,
Mm.
how other neurotransmitters like dopamine and tyrosine and all the other neurotransmitters, they are affected by what's going on in the microbiome. And earlier I said, the gut can affect what's happening in the brain. And so what we're really trying to do is demonstrate that. So when you run the test, of course, you'll get all the info with the gut zoomer. You'll get a list of those neurotransmitters. And then there's several infographics in there. So pictures that shows you, oh, you're high in this bacteria or you're low in this bacteria, and that affects that enzyme that creates that neurotransmitter or affects how
Wow.
it's recirculated or how it's taken up. So it's a really interesting and fascinating uh, new look at how the gut again affects neurotransmitters. So that's why Vibrant kind of married those two tests together. So it's just much, much more value in that test now than what
Wow.
we had previously.
So basically, with this test and then the approaches that we do, definitely we get to manage or control or yeah, modify like our brain and our emotions in a way, because we if we have more serotonin, we're gonna be feeling better and less stress, etc., etc., or vice versa. So it's a definitely there are exams that are vanguardistic because they're taking us to what really we want in medicine, that it's not only cure but prevent diseases and prevent them in a way that we can have a better life, not only if you're sick or you have a real bad um, matter concern, health concern, but rather than making us, if we are a healthy person, live better and have more understanding on what is happening in the gut, that it's affecting the brain, it's affecting our personality, it's affecting our mood.
Yes.
And in a way, it reflects on how we live and in our relationships and everything in our capability of concentrating and being more sharp. So I feel it's amazing, and that's what I find fascinating about Vibran, that we can get to understand better that it's happening, and doing the right approach, we feel better in a tangible way.
Yeah, yeah, the just like you're saying, just because somebody has anxiety or depression, it doesn't mean that they've got a deficiency of an antidepressant drug, right? It could be coming out of their gut. Think of people who go through life and everything's okay, and then they're suddenly anxious or they suddenly become depressed and nothing happened. It's more than likely because they've got a leaky blood-brain barrier and they've got neuroinflammation or their gut microbiome is off. So um, just throwing a pharmaceutical, a drug at a symptom, sometimes it works, sometimes it's great. Pharmaceuticals are helpful and have saved millions of lives, right? And improved lives. However, they're not always the right answer. And so, as I was going to say, it's a great time to be a clinician because we have all these extra tests where we can really get down and find out why somebody has an issue. And if we can fix your gut microbiome and get rid of the anxiety or get rid of the depression, I mean, that's lifelong healing and that's true healing rather than just kind of replacing it with a medication. So there's just great ways to use all these different tests.
Exactly. And for what I see is that, okay, you have the brain, so you can see the inflammation in the brain, then you can relate that to the inflammation in the gut, and then you can relate that, for example, with the food summer. Like, what is
Mhm.
it that you're eating that
Yep.
it's making you activate your immune system, that it's making more or less leaky gut, and that it's
Mhm.
making everything that we're doing. So it's beautiful because, and talking more about logistics, I know these exams can be made like at home. People receive the kits and they do
Mhm.
their own measurement, taking the saliva or the urine or the fecal or some little blood in the finger, and with that anyone can do it in their homes and then sending it back. And I do know that you also have like these panels that you can do, like maybe two Zoomers and one
Mhm.
panel, or the three Zoomers. I usually do the Neurozoomer, the Gut Zoomer, and the Food Zoomer, the three Zoomers,
Yeah.
because as I said, I feel like those give you like, okay, this is how my brain is doing because of my gut, but because of my food. So you have like a panorama. But I'm gonna start using more the micronutrient exam, also the organic acid testing. I feel it's beautiful. I know you also added like a zoomer extra for the, I think the summer
Oh yeah. Yep. So the organic acids tests, we're also now combining it with the oxidative stress panel. And
okay.
so those two are now called the cellular zoomer. And that also the oxidative stress test. So oxidation, you can kind of think of it like biological rusting, right? A lot of cars don't really rust anymore like they did, but that's oxidation. So it's just the interaction of the elements in the environment causing breakdown. And that's what happens to our bodies. We rust, so to speak, and that's called oxidation. So just living, breathing, eating food causes oxidation. Environmental chemicals cause oxidation. Everything does. That's why we age, essentially. But with this oxidative stress profile, we can look at 16 different compounds that are byproducts of oxidation in the body. So different, is the DNA being oxidized and damaged? Is the RNA being oxidized and damaged? Or fats? So we can see how much of this oxidative burden a person has. And it's really interesting. There's a graph in that test too that shows that person's age and how much oxidation they have. And then it's a calculated graph, but it'll show that, as an example, hey, this person says they're 45 years old, but they've actually got so much oxidation in their body that they actually look like they're 54 years old. And remember, that's that oxidation that causes aging. So it's really useful to look at that and then gives people reason to, hey, I really should change my diet. Hey, I really should be eating more antioxidant rich foods. Maybe I should start supplementing with some antioxidant nutrients. Maybe I should do what have you. So anyway, that's married with the organic acids test now. And again, lots of information, lots of excellent information on all these tests.
Well, the way that I explain organic acid testing is like if you would go to a house and see their or to a family and you would see their garbage, you can more or less know that family. You say, oh, there are a lot of people here, or there's only one, or they eat junk food, or they are very healthy, or they like, I don't know, like you can get to, or they have kids, or they are
Yeah.
old people. So in a way, the organic acid testing is measuring your garbage, and in this way, you can understand how your cells and what's happening inside your body that you're detoxify well, or well, literally garbage, and what
Yep.
is it that garbage, and then what are the things that you can do to fix that family
Yeah.
to get better garbage in a way. Also, like I love that test. Also, I always get confused in when to use what because I always like all of them. I also love the mold panel because
Mhm.
I do feel that many times we go over like food and habit changes and vitamins and supplements and getting better in digestion and making the person much more holistic approach, etc. But if someone lives in a moldy house and their immune system definitely is not interacting well with that mold, like people don't progress. So also what I love about these exams is that get you the answer for when you are not evolving or when you started, I don't know, losing weight and then you stopped, or where you started getting better and then you stopped getting better. So I don't know if you want to say something about
Sure.
this.
Yeah, well, first off, I like your analogy about the looking through the garbage of a family better than my car analogy. So I'm going to borrow that one if you're all right with that. But
Obviously.
no, the organic acids is it's not a simple test. There's a many markers on it, and they can mean one marker that's high could mean several different things. So it's really putting the pieces of the puzzle together. But it's an excellent test at looking at, how we're producing energy as well. So we look at the mitochondria and the garbage coming from the mitochondria. And so that's one area where that test is excellent is, everybody has fatigue, right? I'm tired. Well, what causes fatigue? Like 500 different things. It's one thing to be tired because your sleep is poor or you have stress, but really there's a lot of folks who are just tired despite sleeping and doing all the right things. So it's a good test for looking at our energy systems in that way. And I lost my train of thought. What was the other? What was the
No,
other?
the mold, like so
Oh, the
the
mold,
organic
the
acid and then
toxins.
the
Yeah.
mold.
Yeah, so looking at the mold, mycotoxins are little small chemicals that come off of mold that are very damaging, like you said, to the kidneys, the liver, the immune system, the brain. We can look at environmental toxins, all the pesticides and herbicides and junk, that man-made junk that's in our environment. And we look at heavy metals, right? Mercury, arsenic, lead. All these things are everywhere, sadly. And as people, we are bioaccumulators, so we take this stuff and for better or worse, when these things are in the body knows they're not good for us, and so we hide them away. We stuff them in the fat cells, we stuff them in the bone where they won't try and bother us so much. But that's an excellent test for those people you were just talking about. They come in, you've taken their case. Okay, here's what we're going to do to get you well, and they're just not responding. They're just not getting well. And those toxins can often be those hidden limiters of somebody getting well, right? You're a great clinician, your patient's very um, uh,
Yeah,
compliant, everybody's doing the
discipline.
right thing, but they're just not getting well. So those toxins can be those hidden limiters. So that's a kind of depends on the person. Sometimes I'll run those tests first. Sometimes I'll say, hey, we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting the response we wanted. So then we can go look at those toxins. But that's another really important set of tests. If we could run all the tests on everybody all the time, that would be wonderful, but can't always do all of them.
Yeah, and what I say to people is that these exams are beautiful because they're like a Google map. I mean, like you can
Yeah.
get to get better in your health if you do the change of habits, if you get better in your gut with the food changes, etc., etc. But these exams get you much quicker, faster, accurate, and precise of what is it that you need and how you need to do it so you can really see the results. So as I say, for example, I treat a lot of autistic patients, and that's one of our main patients. And with the neurosummer that I've been working on like for the last year, it has been amazing because as I say, you can get to know if it's more like a pandas oriented, even though if you cannot diagnose it
Mhm.
as a 100%, it can give you like an idea of, okay, definitely we need to focus more on the pandas approach, or no, let's focus more on maybe external therapies or OT or PT, but it gives you like an accurate understanding of where is the patient at, and where is the brain at
Mhm.
in that moment, to say.
Yep, that's a great point because one condition, autism or Alzheimer's or whatever, it's not just one cause. It's not just one thing that happened. Most often in physiology, biology, it's several things. So as I say, there's different brands of autism. There's different brands maybe of Alzheimer's. So this is where that testing can really help the clinician pinpoint and narrow down where maybe some symptoms are coming from. And then obviously that just gives you better ideas for action and therapies and to get people well.
And well, and also knowing if someone was here and then how is it working, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm doing all this but I don't feel any different. But when you
Mhm.
go accurate and you have the numbers and you have the before and after, you can definitely, and as I say, I'm impressed of how you do see the difference when you do the follow up and you repeat the exam and you see like the actions that you're doing
Yeah.
are really working. And it, as I say, for me, why I do these exams is because they take you faster and more accurate and more precise on the actions that you have to do. Because yes, we all know that we have to get better in sleep, we all know that we have to eat better, we all know that we have to take some supplements, but because that maybe food is not enough, people think food is enough, but maybe now because of agriculture there's not enough nutrients in food. But understanding like, okay, where is my inflammatory response, why is it that I'm having it, more precisely, it takes you to pinpoint that action much deeper and as I say, precise, and obviously you get better better results. And well, and we're talking here about health, and as I say, we all dream about being healthy, but I always ask my audience like, okay, but what is it that we're doing to be healthy? Are we really investing not only money but time and energy to really have that dream of being healthy covered? And what is it that we're doing to get there?
Yeah. And this too, is like you can do all the things to be healthy. You could work your whole life and be healthy and do all the things, but disease still happens. We're still susceptible because we're living, breathing organisms. So just eating right and sleeping and managing stress, that goes a long way for a lot of people, but not for everybody. And those people where they've done all the right things, they're doing all the right things, but they're still having symptoms. That's where these tests really excel, is because let's see, what's going on at a deeper level that's contributing to your symptoms.
Exactly. So now to be finishing, I would usually say that, for example, for an autistic children, and I want you to correct me or give me better answers, I would do the neurosummer, the gut summer, and the food summer, for example. And sometimes instead of the food summer, I do the organic acid testing, or usually with autistic children, I do five. I go for the neurosummer, gut summer, food summer, and the organic acid testing with the toxins. And
Mhm.
those five, I don't know, like in what order would you do them, or if someone that is hearing us that has an autistic children wants to do some exams, what would you say they can start doing and proceeding?
I like that set of tests. I would add in that micronutrient
Uh,
zoomer before I did the food zoomers. So if you could do
Okay.
all those that you mentioned, that would be good. The food zoomer, kids with autism have pretty selective diets as is. So, it can be challenging for parents to remove even more foods from their diet, or, they're only going to eat these ones. So I would go a little deeper and look at the micronutrients. Like, is this child's selective diet, is it covering all their micronutrient needs? So that's just kind of my own personal approach on that.
Okay. And if you, for example, would have, as you said, more engineers
Yeah.
or this I don't know, 40-year-old man that it's healthy, wants to get healthier, which ones you, for example, would recommend for them to do?
I would start with, people who are doing okay, but they want to make sure they're very, very healthy. Otherwise, again, the nutrient zoomer, certainly start with that gut zoomer. Those would be the two main ones. You might do a food sensitivity if, let's say, most people end up eating the same 10 foods every week, same 10 food ingredients, whether it's, corn chip, corn tortilla, corn bread, you know what I'm saying? It's always the same kind of ingredients. So in that intake, if you see that, that's when maybe a food zoomer might be a good idea for those folks. But just kind of general health, maybe nutrients, gut zoomer, oxidative stress would be interesting to look at
Exactly,
also.
the cellular tumor maybe that you were
Yep.
saying.
Yes.
Okay. And if you would have someone, for example, with mental issues, you would say definitely the neurosumer and which one else, for example?
And the gut zoomer, especially because it has the neurotransmitters on it now.
Okay. The
So
neurosumer and the
definitely
gut tumor
those.
and maybe the food panel or no, or the micronutrient panel, for example, no?
Yes, for sure.
Or the micronutrient. So as you see, or people that are hearing us, you can do these combinations of tests. Obviously, people can do only one, but I do feel it interesting that you do three at the same time because you have a better price, and then you can get like deeper in the whole like combo of understanding that like where's your inflammation and what are the actions that you can get to do. And so doctor, to end, like would you say like this is definitely these are some exams that like my dream or what I feel is like these exams, like in the future everyone will do them, and like a regular doctor will do these exams, but how far do you feel we're from that, or how do you see the future of the medicine integrating more these types of exams in the near, in the long future? I don't know how you see it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to talk about too, though, I'll answer that, but we also have hormone tests.
Ah, that's true.
We we can look at hormones. It's called a hormone zoomer, and we're looking at hormones in the urine, and that's a really important test too, just because we can see not only what hormones a person is making, but how they're metabolizing them. So again, like conventional tests may say, you have this much estrogen. Okay. But is she taking that estrogen? Is she metabolizing it down a healthy pathway or down an unhealthy pathway? And you don't see that on those basic tests. So you can look at a person's hormones. Obviously, men and women have hormonal imbalances. That's a big problem these days because we have the environmental chemicals that are endocrine disruptors that damage our hormone system. So we have that hormone test. We have a cardiovascular test. That's also important. Half the people with heart disease or heart attacks have normal cholesterol. So there's much, much more to look at as far as heart disease goes and prevention. So if you have a 40-year-old man or even a woman, heart disease doesn't discriminate between men and women anymore. But you might have a man or a woman, again, who's 40 something or even in their 30s and a parent had a heart attack or heart disease. That's an important environment or preventive test too.
Wow,
But
beautiful, that one.
to answer your question, I think the future is bright for functional medicine. When I started practice about 24 years ago, I had people who are curious as well, what is it you do and what is this? And now, I say, oh, I'm a functional medicine doctor, or I'm a naturopathic doctor. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I know what you do. So more and more and more are adopting this, and medical doctors, doctors of osteopathy, clinic, every profession is embracing this. Every clinical profession is embracing this. So yeah, someday you'll get all these tests or some of these tests in a regular doctor's office. So I think we're all headed in the right direction. Like I said, it's changed immensely in the 20 plus years I've been in this field.
Wow, yeah, and every time more down to hand for people to do them. So anyone who's hearing this that want to do the exam of any of these exams that we were talking about, they are easy. They can do them. You can do them at home. In this case, you can contact NutriWhite, and we would give you the way to do it. And also, if people are doctors, if doctors are hearing this, they can also start to implement all of these tests in their practice, and they definitely you would get much so better answers. If you're a dermatologist, the face gets better. If you are a gynecologist, as you say, people get pregnant much easier, and PCOS and amenorrhea and all of this get much better if you will do this approach, or if you are a neurologist and treat any kind of autism or symptoms of any kind. And also if as a doctor you're treating cancer or as you say cardiovascular issues, I think of the quote unquote that it's not instead of, but it's in plus of.
Mhm.
So it's whatever you do in your practice, but you can sum up all of these that the functional medicine approach gives, because it gives you much more information and answers. And what we all want is the people to become healthier, happier, and prevent and cure diseases, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Most disease, we don't wake up one day with a disease, right? It's been brewing for a long time. Even a cold, you wake up one day with a sore throat, runny nose. That virus has been in your body for the last 7 to 10 days, and your immune system's been fighting with it, and it finally lost. So this is where, this preventive approach really matters because I think most folks think, oh, I woke up one day and I had this illness. Like, no, it's been going on for a long time. So using these tests, we can really try to pin this down. Like on the neural zoomer, I forgot to say too, a lot of those changes, a lot of those antibody antigen interactions on that neural zoomer, those we'll see those 4 years before there's any structural changes in the brain. So
Wow.
it's highly, highly predictive for those events in the future. So that's just kind of a good example of like let's look under the hood, so to speak, see what's going on today so that you're not sick tomorrow. So
Super beautiful, doctor. Well, I don't know if you want to say any last words, or thank you so much for your time and dedication to explaining everything and giving us your knowledge. But if you
yeah,
want to
no,
say
no, thank
anything
you for
else.
having me. This is a great conversation. And like you said, check to have people look at Vibrant Wellness. We've got a number of additional tests that we didn't even get into today. We could probably talk all day about all the different tests, but there's um, there's a test for everybody. Not that everybody needs a test, but really we need to take that preventive approach, just like with a car. You change the oil and you change the filters and you do all these things for your car, even though the car doesn't have any problems, right? We take better care of our cars and our homes sometimes than our own bodies, and you only get one of these, right? So I really encourage people just take a look at your clinic and take a look at the tests and see how you can use these to improve your health.
Exactly, exactly. Well, thank you very much, doctor. Bye bye.
You bet. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Bueno, thank you, doctor.